Willow Creek Springs presents Healthy Living with your host, Joe Grumbine.
Well, hello, and welcome back to the Healthy Living Podcast. I'm Joe Grumbine, your host, and today we begin a new journey. This is going to be a special series of episodes focused on a single topic, and I'll be sharing a journey with you as I'm going down it myself. So on October 15th of this year, just a couple weeks ago, I was diagnosed with a squamous cell carcinoma, which is a cancer that has a number of ways to be solved, but it's potentially a very deadly, dangerous cancer as well. And we're going to talk about this journey that I'm now on to overcome this obstacle. And so the beginning, this first episode, I'm going to just talk about, I don't know, the whole concept of it all, finding out how it came to be, how I got from when I noticed there was something wrong to how I finally found out what I had. And it's kind of a difficult story to tell because I kind of don't even remember when I noticed this lump on my neck. It was at least 2 years ago. I think a couple years ago, I went to Alaska to go fishing, and I think I noticed it before that. And for those of you who know me, I am the eternal optimist. I've got a sunny disposition. I'm the can-do-it guy. I'm a visionary. I make shit happen. I manifest all these things. I have helped people resolve their own cancers for 40 years. I've worked with plant medicines and done so many things. And I never really thought that I'd be facing it myself, but when it happened, it wasn't completely shocking. And I'm going to kind of go all the way back. I'm going to get into aspects, every kind of aspect about this. So this first episode, I may be rambling a little bit as I'm trying to find my way into how this story begins to get told. And we'll get into everything like the causes, what I'm doing about it. And I think maybe one of the most important pieces of this right now is that this podcast right here is the only place I'm telling the story. I have stopped. I went dark on social media, on my personal information about 2 months ago, a little more than that before I knew. But I knew I was up against something difficult, and I really didn't want to share that with the world that way. I haven't told most members of my family. I haven't told many people that I know, and I don't have any plans to. And it's not because I don't want anybody to know. I frankly don't give a fuck if anybody knows or not. That's not the issue. The issue is today, right now, my focus is on resolving this. And if you had any idea how much time it takes to tell the same story over and over and over again to somebody just so they can know, you don't gain anything from it. They just, want to know because they care. And I put quotes on that because people feel like they care about something, but they don't act like they care about something. And I live in a world of truth now. And so, when you get hit with something like this, all of a sudden reality is reality and words are words, and the two are generally not the same thing. And people are generally full of shit. It's just the way life is. I wish it wasn't. And I wish I could just say, oh, everybody is so sincere and so full of integrity. But the truth is, they're generally not. And people will tell you how much they care and they'll tell you this and that, but you don't see them or hear them or have anything to do. Now, that's not to say I do not have a strong support team. I have a wonderful support team, and I have a number of people who know all about this because they've been an integral part of my life in the last 6 months to a year. Some people are very new into it, and I'm spending a lot of time working with them to resolve this. Y'all know who you are. And if you came to this as being directed to hear the story, well, that's the reality. If you consider yourself my friend, but I don't generally talk to you, and you just want to know what's happening because you care, well, think about it. How many times do I have to tell the same story over and over again? And this way you get to hear the whole thing. You get to hear all about it. I'm going to be so effing transparent. You're going to learn every little detail about this journey, because here's why. The purpose of this podcast is to bring a community together that is built on a quest for healthy living. Let's get healthy. Let's be healthy. Let's live a healthy life. Let's find our potential as human beings, as living organisms. Let's find these answers. Let's do it together. Let's learn from each other. Well, I've always believed that when somebody goes through a problem, they get given a gift of being able to help somebody else that has that same problem. And I've always helped people that had cancers, but I never had empathy because I never went through it. I can never say, well, I know how you're going, how you feel. I know all these things. Well, now I do. It is what it is. And so that's a little difficult truth. Anybody who has been around me lately realize I'm about the truth now. I don't care really about your feelings anymore. You don't care about mine generally, and it's okay. I don't care about mine generally either. I do care about the truth, and I do care about resolving this problem, and I do care about making the world a better place and helping people that I can through the tools and abilities that I have. And so I'm going to use this for that. So if you get offended, hey, you can listen or not. You can be my friend or not. What matters is if you got something to offer me to help me solve this problem, hey, reach out. Let's do this. I am building a team to resolve this. And once I do resolve it, I'll be able to help even more people resolve their problems, and I'll make it available to happen. So I hope you understand this. I have a lot of people that are gonna probably, be butthurt yet once again or whatever. Doesn't concern me anymore. I'm sorry. So about little more than 2 years ago, I noticed I had a swelling on my neck. And anybody who's known me, like I was saying before, I'm a total optimist. I could do anything. There's nothing I can't accomplish. And anybody who knows me knows that. I blow people up because of my dreams and my visions and my hopes and my abilities. And I every time I get somebody who thinks they want to help me, I'm okay, here we go. And then they explode. So now I'm just keeping this inside, working on myself, and that's all I can do. And anybody who wants to come and be a part of it, I welcome you. Stay as long as you can, do what you can. It's all good. Everything is good. At one point, I told myself, of course, well, it's some allergy, it's some swollen gland. I'm going to resolve it. I'm going to think it away, because that's what I do. I resolve problems with my sheer will, with my mind, with my mental power, with all those things, these tools that I have. And I watched it happen. I've had a million miracles in my life, little things that could never happen. They happened. Why? Because I really wanted it bad enough. Because I prayed, because I got a herd of angels that follows me around and keeps me out of harm's way. Whatever the reason, I do not know. I just know that in my life, I've watched the impossible happen over and over again. So I kept going, yeah, it's going to go away. It's going to go away. Finally, after a while, it hadn't gone away. And I'm like, well, maybe it's time to go see a doctor. Now, for anybody who knows, I was raised by a surgeon. I've lived my life in the doctor world. I do not like doctors as a rule. Doctors are arrogant, full of themselves. I know they're trained by drug companies, they're limited in their scope of knowledge, even though they believe they know everything, and their time is, more precious than lithium. And so I have no interest in spending time with them as a rule. Now, there's a handful of doctors that I've spent lots of time with, and dear friends and loved ones. But that being said, it's not because they're doctors, it's just the human beings themselves. And they happen to be doctors. So first thing off, I go and I find a doctor, and he's local, seemed to be a nice guy. And he's like, wow, you got a big lump there. And I says, yeah, I do. And he says, ask me about it. But yeah, at the same time, I'm in great shape. I'm fit. He says, well, heck, I don't understand. You have this giant lump, but look at you. You're a physical specimen. You're in good shape. You're not overweight. You seem very healthy aside from this giant lump sticking out of your neck. And I says, well, I don't know. What do you think? He says, well, we need to run some tests. He goes, you need to get yourself some insurance, and that way, whatever the cost of these, you'll be able to afford it because, things get expensive. Okay. So we go and figure out insurance. I go start paying, $500-600 a month so that I can go visit a doctor. Okay. So we get to this doctor, go back to him. Okay, I got insurance now. Okay, we want to do a CAT scan or a CT scan, I think it was. Yeah, it was a CT scan first. No, it was an ultrasound. That's what it was. And he goes, I want you to do an ultrasound. Okay, did an ultrasound. Comes back and it says, well, it's a solid mass, not full of liquid, and need to do some more information. So then he comes and he tells me, he goes, okay, here's my opinion. He says, because of the size of this mass and because of how strong and healthy you are, it's not interfering with your swallowing or your vision or anything else. He says, I'm 95% sure it's not cancerous. He says, I just cannot see how, if you had a mass this size, that it wouldn't be taking over you. You wouldn't be paralyzed. You wouldn't be, decimated by now, and you would be, shrunk down to nothing, and all of these things. And I'm just like, okay, well, that's good news. He says, however, you need to get this thing out of you because it's sitting on top of your carotid artery, and it is not shrinking, so it's probably growing, and eventually it's going to cause you problems. And I said, agreed. He goes, plus it's really ugly. I'm like, yeah, I understand that. This is not a vanity trip. However, it's hard to get anybody to take you seriously when you got a giant lump sticking out of your neck. And this is a fucking giant lump. I mean, it's not like you cannot ignore this thing. It's like a softball sticking out of my neck. And I said, all right, fair enough. And he says, I want you to do some more tests. And I says, okay. And then I just sat on it for a while. I don't know why. Again, I think mostly it was because he said he was so sure that it was not cancer that I was like, okay, well, I got to deal with this thing. I don't want to deal with this thing right now because I got so many things. My business has got issues. My life has got issues. I got all these things I got to do. I got to get my life in order so that if I have to take time off, I can afford to do that, and life, whatever, as an entrepreneur, you have a unique set of challenges, and I own all my problems. I don't blame anybody for anything. I just, I'm dealing with what I'm dealing with when it comes to life's problems. And I waited probably about 6 more months. And finally, I went in and got the CT scan done that he ordered and got the blood work done that he ordered. And at this point, I'm like, all right, it's time to get this thing figured out. I'm done with it. I finally came to a point where, I started working with some plant medicine. I began purging in my life, removing things. And I'm like, what the fuck am I still dealing with this lump for when it isn't going away? And I don't know if I had, no, I don't think I had begun the extreme diet yet. I just was still, I was on a good diet, not rigorous, but good, as opposed to where I've been in the past 7 years. Good exercise, good, keeping stress away, general good health practices as a rule. Not really taking any extra supplements or anything like that, just eating good and always get my good sleep and always get my good exercise. Some of the basic pillars of health I follow. And then I get the CT scan back, and I had another friend who works in an alternative clinic, and he deals with ketamine and some of these other treatments for people's depression and PTSD and stuff. And he says, "Hey, I got another doctor who is willing to give you a second opinion." And this other doctor, Dr. Kent, he's asking me, "What the hell's this thing on your neck?" And I told him what's up. He's like, "Man, you got to get that thing out. I'm concerned. I don't like it. I don't, he's thinking that it might be cancer." And I'm like, "Well, this is what he said, blah, blah, blah." And I go and he says, before I had gotten the test results back, I had an appointment, and the doctor said, "Well, your blood work came back pretty good. You're low on vitamin D." I'm like, "That's weird," but whatever. There was a couple of minor things, but no major issues with blood work. Um, and then he says, "I want you to, I want you to get a needle biopsy. I want you to get a biopsy of this thing." Now, my personal experience with biopsies was nil. I've always been afraid of them because I was always told by different people from different circles. And once again, this is where the information stream is so difficult, because you get fed information from lots of sources. And pretty much the information stream that I've received in my life said that, well, if you get a biopsy, you're cracking into something. And when you crack into it, it's more likely to spread. And it kind of makes sense. It's like you got this pocket full of disease in you, and you poke a hole in it. Does some leak out? Does it get in your blood? Does it get in your plasma? Does it get loose? And in my mind, I say, well, it could. I don't like that idea. I don't want to do that. And I got a little pissed off at this doctor for even considering it. And then finally, I requested a copy of all the test records, because I had this other doctor that was willing to do a second opinion. And then I read the results of the CT scan, and it said possible squamous cell carcinoma. I was like, fuck. I knew a guy a long time ago that I tried to help with oil, cannabis oil. And by the time he was referred to me, he was already in bed, and he had this gigantic lump. Even, I think it was maybe even bigger than mine now, but it was opened up. It had like gills on it. It was really disgusting and horrible. And I tried to get him to take, a sufficient amount of oil, and he eventually passed away. But he was definitely weakened to a point where he could hardly do anything by the time I even met him. And it was probably too little too late. But that was my only experience with this concept of this cancer. Like, shit, I do not want that. I really do not want that. And I'm like, God dang it. So now I'm like, okay, I got to really find out what's up. And so then I go back and I says, "Man, what the hell? You're ordering a biopsy." He's like, "Well, why didn't you go and do this?" And I says, "You didn't even consult me. Why didn't you even tell me that there was a chance that there was a problem?" He goes, "Well," I go, "Is it true? What's the odds of a biopsy having complications. And he says, well, it could happen. But there's no real way to know if it's cancer unless you analyze a piece of it. I'm like, God dang it. So now I'm just like, okay, well, I can't let this test that said it looks like could be, didn't say it was, so it said it could be, and I got to know. So he refers me to a specialist. That turned out to be a total headache. The clinic couldn't get apparently this whole time, my insurance didn't have my date of birth right. So I go to check the referral on the specialist, and it turned out that I had to pay for one of the tests several $100s, and just it's becoming a nightmare already, spending out money I don't have. And now the specialist can't locate me in the insurance. That led to a 4-hour conversation or series of calls with insurance. They finally got my address or my date of birth right. Finally, once I get that right, my experience with this clinic was great. They got me right in, and I meet with this doctor, Dr. Berkovic. He's this young Eastern European doctor, cocky, arrogant, kind of an asshole. And I sat down with him, and he looks at the thing, and he says, well, in my experience, I'd say you're 95%, I'm 95% certain that it is cancer. And, there's treatments we can do. It can be removed. It's a solvable problem, but you can't let it get away from you. Okay, well, okay. He says, the only way we're gonna know, I says, what about doing tests? Isn't there some other way? He goes, here's how it works. There's 3 types of biopsies. One is a needle biopsy where they stick a little needle that captures like a little core sample, like they do in the Arctic, where they go and drill down into the glaciers and they have this, or the mud in the bottom of the sea, and they have these tubes and they run down and they capture a layer of it and they pull it out. He says the problem with that is we can't see where we're going. We can, try to hit the right spot. We can try to pull the right sample, but you're not going to get a lot of material, and it may be sufficient, may not. Sometimes we have to do several biopsies to get conclusive results. I says, okay, what else? He goes, well, then they have it's a core sample biopsy where it's a much larger needle and it takes a larger core sample. And then he says the third and best option is we just do a surgery. We open it up and I selectively cut out the pieces that are necessary and we submit it into pathology lab. And I says, okay, well, tell me about the risk. He says, oh, that's all bullshit. He goes, I says, well, what about all the studies I've heard? And he goes, yeah, there's a study for everything. And I says, I know, that's the problem. I can't seem to get a straight answer from anybody. I get an answer it's like politics. If you're on the right side, the left side's evil and wrong. If you're on the left side, the right side's evil and wrong. Well, it's the same with medicine. If you're on the pharma side, well, the natural side's evil and wrong. If you're on the natural side, pharma side's evil and wrong. I cannot get straight answers from people. And he says, look, in my experience, anybody that I gave a biopsy to and it exploded on them, it was going to do that anyways. It was just timing. And I says, all right, I can own that. I've always said correlation does not equal causality. And just because 2 things happen, they seem to be related, does not mean they are. And so I said, I more and more as I've been working more and more with different plant medicine and different healers and people that I've really becoming more attuned to my own body and to my own intuition. And whether it was a guide or God or my own body saying, hey, go ahead, you're okay. I finally felt at peace to get this thing done. And so I did. And I went in and he gave it a topical, or not topical, but he gave me a shot like a Novocaine shot, basically. I think it was lidocaine or one of the canes, just like you would get, an oral surgery. And it numbed it up, and while I was getting this thing, they have this surgical mat around it, and I can't see what's going on, and I'm looking up at the little grids in the ceiling, which is kind of funny. I'll take you back to one of the last times I was at a doctor when I was 22 years old getting a vasectomy. And I remember staring at those dots as they're carving my nuts and going, oh, this hurts, this hurts, this hurts. And I just kept counting these dots. And so I said, well, I hope it isn't like that, because that was very unpleasant. I can remember from 50 years ago or 30 years ago, whenever the hell it was. It was a long time ago. And no, there was, I could feel things moving around. I could feel pressure, but there really wasn't much pain. So finally, he gets the thing done. He sews it up, and then he globs a bunch of glue on top of it. And I was pretty impressed with the finishing technique, because now that it's finally come off, I never had to have any sutures removed. There's a little line where the incision was, and I don't know. I don't care about the scarring, because whatever. When they finally take this thing out, it'll probably be a much bigger scar. But anyways, he showed me this little jar, this little clear glass jar, and it had two little square chunks. I'd say probably maybe a 1/4 inch by a 1/4 inch, maybe a little bigger. It's hard to say. They were in liquid, and it looked very pink and vibrant, almost like a cut of steak, maybe not as dark, lighter meat color. And in my mind, I said, well, that looks like pretty healthy tissue. It doesn't look diseased. And I was like, okay, it is what it is, right? You're accepting, you're watching, you're seeing the truth. This is the friggin' truth. And I said, so okay, so what's the plan now? And he says, well, we send it to pathology, but they're really behind. It could take a week, could take 2 weeks. And we wait. Okay, I'll wait. And so I did. A week went by, and I don't hear anything. And in my mind, you hear stories about, somebody gets blood work done, and they take forever because it's not a big deal. But you get blood work done and they find something really dangerous, they call you right away. You got to get in right now. So in my mind, I was like, okay, well, I'm not hearing from them, so no news is good news, right? And I call them at a week out, and I says, hey, I haven't heard anything. Is everything all right? And it says, yeah, we're just waiting to hear. I haven't heard anything yet. Okay. And I says, I'll give them another week. And sure enough, at the 2 week mark on the 15th, probably about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I get a call. And it's this doctor, and he says, the results of your biopsy came back, and it's a squamous cell carcinoma. And I said, okay, what do we do next? And he says, well, I'm going to order a PET scan so we can see how far it's traveled and where it is. And I'm going to refer you to a surgical team at Loma Linda. And I says, okay. I didn't hear anything back. And a few days later, I decided to call back and check. And oh no, he gave me a number, a number at Loma Linda. So a few days later, I don't know, I think it was Monday or Tuesday after. Oh, no, I think it was the Friday after. It was a Tuesday it happened. The Friday, right before we did this big event, I called over there at Loma Linda, and they did not have my referral yet. And finally, I got them to figure out who I was and the whole deal. I went back and forth, and then they go, oh, well, your insurance is not contracted with this hospital, so you're going to have to get another referral. So I went back and went back to the doctor, and they said, okay, well, we're going to send you a referral to UCI. And to this point, I still have not gotten validation of that yet. I've still not caught confirmation of the PET scan. I'm actually gonna, as soon as I finish with this, I'm gonna go follow up with everything. So at this moment, this is where I am with the actual news. I have begun a huge protocol of measures, and I will begin subsequent episodes talking about those. And but remember, this is the only place I'm going to be discussing in any detail what's happening here. And I will be giving every detail about what happens as I destroy this squamous cell carcinoma that's invaded my body. And we'll be talking about literally every aspect of it. So I appreciate everybody who has been helpful, and everybody who's not. I hope you gained something from it. Have a good day. We'll talk to you next time. This has been another episode of the Healthy Living Podcast. We produce this show so that people can share their stories, people that have overcome obstacles, people that are undergoing obstacles. We're building a community of health-minded individuals. If you're interested in supporting the show, please leave a review on the platform you're listening to it on. If you're interested in becoming a guest, please send an email to itsjoegrumbine@gmail.com, or you can send a note into the notes section of the podcast. All right. Well, thank you for supporting this show, and we hope you've enjoyed it.